Welcome to the deep dive, and this one's going to be really interesting. Today we're going to be diving into alien encounters, the possibility of alien encounters.
Right.
And I think it was really cool. The listener sent in excerpts from Alien Encounters by Chuck Missler and Mark Eastman,
Oh, interesting.
and it tackles UFO sightings, alleged abductions,
Wow.
ancient astronaut theories, and it even touches on potential spiritual implications.
Yeah, the spiritual implications are, I think that's where it gets really fascinating because it's not just are we alone, but then if we're not, what does that mean for us?
Right. Exactly. And it's like, are we truly alone?
Right.
Are we being visited?
Right.
And if so, what's their agenda? And then you start thinking, like, could these encounters be somehow intertwined with, like, ancient myths or even, our history?
Yeah. Well, and what I think is really interesting about the book is they don't just present this as some sort of fringe theory.
Right.
They really dive into like government secrecy and some of the increasingly bizarre behavior of UFOs that have been reported by really credible witnesses,
Yeah.
and even potentially connect some of these occurrences to biblical accounts, which is fascinating.
Yeah, absolutely. So, this is going to be a really interesting deep dive. And just a reminder to our listeners, we are approaching this objectively.
Yes.
We're just going to be presenting the information from this source material, not taking sides or anything like that.
Right.
We want you to be able to draw your own informed conclusion.
Absolutely. Let the listener decide. We're just presenting the evidence and the information as it's presented in the book.
Right, exactly. So let's get started. So first of all, how does the public perceive all of this?
Yeah.
The book highlights a Gallup poll that found a pretty staggering statistic. 72% of Americans believe in extraterrestrial life,
Wow.
and 48% believe in UFOs.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Why do you think this topic resonates with so many people?
I don't know. Why do you think it's such a
I think it's, the book suggests it's more than just science fiction, right? It points to this growing number of UFO sightings that are reported globally. And a lot of these are by individuals in positions of authority.
Right.
Pilots, military personnel.
Right.
We're not just talking about like, blurry photos anymore. It's like detailed accounts from really credible sources.
Yeah. The book gives the example of the mass sightings in Israel, where you had witnesses seeing strange objects hovering over populated areas and cities.
Right.
It's hard to dismiss those accounts as just fantasy.
No, absolutely. And then, of course, who could forget the Phoenix Lights incident in Arizona back in 1997?
Right.
Hundreds, if not thousands of people witnessed this massive V-shaped object with these bright lights just gliding silently over the city.
Yeah. So speaking of credible witnesses, the book talks about astronaut Gordon Cooper,
Right.
and he, I guess he was interviewed on Paranormal
I
Borderline,
remember that, yeah.
and he claimed to have encountered UFOs during his missions. And this is, one of the original Mercury astronauts, right?
Yeah, that carries some weight when you have somebody of his stature coming out and saying that.
Right, exactly.
And then, of course, there's all the kind of, whispers and rumors about Apollo 11, right?
Right,
Some sources claim that Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin saw UFOs on the moon but were told to keep quiet.
right. Which kind of leads to the concept of government disclosure, right? The book even mentions this leak-a-week strategy,
Right.
where they're saying that maybe the government's trying to, like, gradually prepare the public for, for the reality of extraterrestrial life.
Right, like slowly acclimating us to the idea.
Exactly. So it makes you wonder, if there is such a strategy, what information are they holding back and why?
Well, and they even talk about, a briefing that the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence, or CSETI,
Right?
gave to government officials back in 1997.
Oh, wow.
And one of the astronomers who was involved in that reportedly claimed to have witnessed a potential extraterrestrial signal.
Wow.
So this is, this is really significant stuff.
Yeah. But the book does caution, that not every sighting can be taken at face value.
Right.
There's always the possibility of, misinterpretations or...
Yeah, and I think that's where critical thinking comes in, right?
Right.
We have to assess the credibility of the sources, consider alternative explanations, and just, avoid jumping to conclusions.
Right. So we've got widespread belief, increasing sightings, and all these whispers of government cover-ups. But let's actually talk about the UFOs themselves.
Right.
The book describes these objects performing maneuvers that seem to completely defy our understanding of physics.
Yeah, it's like they're operating under a completely different set of rules.
Right, exactly.
And we have these reports of like instantaneous acceleration and right angle turns at supersonic speeds, even like dematerialization and reappearance. these accounts, especially, like the mass sightings in Belgium in 1990, they really paint this picture of technology that's just far beyond anything that we have.
Right. And so that's where the book introduces this concept of interdimensionality.
Right.
And it's suggesting that these objects may not be bound by the same physical laws that we are.
It's like, imagine if you have a flatlander.
A what?
A flatlander, a being that exists only in two dimensions.
Oh, okay.
Like, think of a piece of paper. They can only perceive length and width.
Okay.
Right. Height is beyond their comprehension.
Okay.
Now imagine a three-dimensional object, like a sphere,
Right.
passing through their plane of existence.
So what would they see?
They would just see this series of circles, like appearing and disappearing,
Oh,
changing size,
right.
seemingly defining the laws of their world, you
Yeah.
know?
So maybe these UFOs are traversing dimensions.
That's the theory.
Yeah, kind of popping in and out of our reality.
Right. And that's why their movements seem impossible to us.
Right. So the book goes into this whole thing about hyperspace and wormholes and the possibility of higher dimensions.
Right.
And they actually draw on concepts from, Riemann's geometry and Einstein's theory of relativity
Right.
to suggest that there might be more to reality than we can actually perceive.
That there's more than meets the eye.
Right. It's pretty mind-blowing, but does the book offer any, concrete scientific evidence? Or is it all just theory?
Well, they do touch on some research suggesting that our universe could be just one of many universes within a larger multiverse.
Right.
This is a concept that some physicists are actually exploring.
Right.
But the book acknowledges that the science behind interdimensionality is still very theoretical at this point.
So we're left with a lot of intriguing possibilities,
Right.
but no definitive answers.
Yeah, it's a fascinating puzzle for sure.
It is. It is. Okay, so we've got these objects, zipping around, defying physics, maybe even popping in and out of existence.
Right.
It makes you wonder, have these, interdimensional beings been around longer than we think?
Oh, that's interesting.
Maybe they've played a role in, our history, our development.
You're getting into the ancient astronaut theory.
Right, exactly.
Like-
And the book does touch on this. It mentions panspermia, which is the idea that life on Earth didn't actually originate here,
Right.
but was seeded by extraterrestrials.
Interesting.
I mean, we still haven't, definitively figure out how life began on our planets.
Right.
But,
It's a compelling theory. And, Francis Crick, who was one of the co-discoverers of DNA,
oh, wow.
he was actually a proponent of panspermia.
Interesting.
And he argued that, the complexity of life and the conditions on early Earth
Right.
make it very difficult to explain how life arose spontaneously.
So maybe those building blocks of life were
Right.
delivered from somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly.
And then the book goes on to connect that idea to the ancient astronaut theory.
Right.
And suggest that these extraterrestrial visitors might have even had a more direct hand in shaping our development as a species.
Right. And a lot of the proponents of this theory, they point to ancient myths and
Yeah.
artifacts as evidence.
Like what?
Well, they interpret stories of gods descending from the heavens, for example,
Right.
or depictions of strange objects and beings in ancient art
Right.
as proof of these extraterrestrial contacts in the past.
They used the example of the Sumerian texts,
Yeah.
which describe, really advanced knowledge of astronomy and mathematics that seems beyond the capabilities of early civilizations.
Right. And then you've got those incredibly detailed Egyptian hieroglyphs,
Right?
some of which seem to depict flying machines
Yeah.
or beings with advanced technology.
Right.
And let's not forget the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Oh, yeah.
The precision and the scale of its construction, it still baffles engineers and architects today.
Yeah. How could, ancient cultures have achieved these things
Right.
without some kind of external influence?
It's a good question.
It is a good question. But the book does also acknowledge, the need for skepticism.
Yeah.
It recognizes that a lot of scholars do interpret these accounts within the context of, ancient mythology and symbolism.
Right.
So couldn't those myths just be, allegorical stories or misinterpretations of natural phenomena?
It's possible. And I think, it's important to consider multiple perspectives
Right.
and avoid jumping to conclusions based on interpretations that might be influenced by, our modern ideas and biases.
Right. So we've got this debate going on,
Right.
Are we seeing the remnants of actual extraterrestrial influence?
Right.
Or are we just projecting our modern fascination with aliens onto the past?
It's a fascinating question.
Yeah, it really is. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about alleged alien contact in, more recent times.
Okay.
The book describes kind of a fascinating evolution of these beliefs,
Right.
and beginning with what they called the contactee movement back in the 1950s,
Right.
where you had all these people claiming to meet these like really friendly
Right.
aliens.
They were benevolent,
Right.
sharing images of peace and enlightenment.
It was almost like a cosmic welcome wagon.
Right, exactly. Like, hey, welcome to the Galactic Federation.
Yeah.
We're happy to have.
Right, right. But then as we move into like the 1960s and beyond,
Yeah.
the narratives start to shift a little bit, and we
Right.
start seeing these more um, unsettling accounts of abductions.
Right. It gets a little darker,
Yeah.
creepier.
Medical experimentation,
Yeah.
which really added a layer of like fear and mystery to these encounters.
Right.
The book highlights some early abduction cases, like the Villas Boas incident in
Oh,
1957
yeah.
and the Betty and Barney Hill abduction in 1961.
Right.
Both of those, they're controversial, but they helped establish some common themes
Yes.
that we see in these abduction stories, even today.
Right.
Small humanoid figures, large heads, big eyes,
Medical examinations.
medical examinations being conducted on board spacecraft,
Yeah.
missing time.
It's as if, like, a chunk of their memory has just been wiped clean.
Yeah, pretty chilling stuff. And this really contributed to this growing sense that something, really strange and perhaps even sinister was happening.
Right.
And then you have the rise of UFO religions, which is another fascinating aspect of this.
Right. Like groups like the Raelian movement.
Right.
They emerged in the 60s and 70s.
Right.
And they basically incorporated these beliefs about extraterrestrials
Right.
into their doctrines.
Right.
They're viewed these beings as like creators
Right.
or these highly evolved spiritual teachers
Right.
who are, guiding humanity towards some sort of new era.
And a lot of these groups, they base their beliefs on these channeled messages
Right.
that they claim to have received.
Yeah, supposedly from extraterrestrial beings.
Yeah. And it's interesting that even though these messages are coming from different sources,
Right.
they often share these common themes.
Right.
It's almost like there's this sort of like extraterrestrial gospel
Right.
that's that's emerging.
It's like a blend of science fiction and spirituality that resonates with a certain segment of the population.
Yeah, but it also raises questions, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what's the validity?
Right. What's the agenda behind these messages?
Right, like why are these supposedly advanced beings so focused on our spirituality?
Right.
You'd think they'd be sharing like, groundbreaking technology.
Right. Solutions to our global problem.
Right, or, something like that. But instead, it's all this talk about like personal growth and cosmic consciousness.
And this really ties into the book's exploration of this, gospel, according to E.T.,
Right.
and its connection to the New Age movement.
Yeah.
This movement, which really gained traction in the latter half of the 20th century.
Yeah.
It embraces a lot of the themes
Right.
that are found in these channeled messages.
Right.
The emphasis on pantheism, the interconnectedness of all things, and humanity's sort of inherent divinity.
Yeah, it's almost like these, extraterrestrial messages are echoing this new age narrative
Right.
of like, a global awakening
Right.
and a shift in human consciousness.
Yeah. And the book even mentions messages from like the Pleiadians.
Yeah.
These supposedly benevolent beings from another star system.
Right.
And they talk about things like spiritual evolution.
Right.
And Earth changes as a kind of cleansing process and
Right.
the need to, harmonize with our planet.
Which kind of echoes the Gaia hypothesis.
Exactly.
This idea that the Earth itself is a sentient being.
Right.
So we have this, convergence of new age beliefs
Right.
and extraterrestrial messages, which is,
A potent mix.
it's potent. It's alluring,
Yeah.
but also a little unsettling at the same time.
It is, and I think the book, it really asks those tough questions.
Right.
It challenges us to look beyond the surface.
Right.
And really consider, the implications of embracing these beliefs without, really critically examining them.
Right. And this leads us to the book's exploration of Earth changes and the idea of a quickening.
Yeah, it's a fascinating concept.
It was popularized by Art Bell, right?
Right, the late-night radio host.
Yeah.
Who was known for kind of, exploring these fringe topics.
Yeah.
But he observed this pattern of accelerating changes on Earth.
Right.
From natural disasters to social unrest,
Right.
global challenges.
Like the pace of change itself is increasing.
Exactly, and it creates this sense of urgency and instability.
And the book doesn't shy away from drawing parallels to biblical prophecies about the end times.
Right.
It points out, similarities between current events
Yeah,
and the events that are described in, like, the Book of Revelation.
right.
Pretty sobering stuff.
It is, and it's something that, I think the book approaches with a blend of curiosity and caution.
Right,
Are we just witnessing like a natural cycle of change?
right,
Or is there something more profound
right.
unfolding?
And then how do these alleged extraterrestrial beings fit into all of this?
Right,
The book explores some pretty wild ideas, including the possibility of, like, an alien evacuation.
right,
It's almost like a cosmic lifeboat.
right, for chosen
Yeah, for
individuals.
chosen individuals. Some New Age teachings and these channeled messages suggest that, um, that extraterrestrials will rescue certain individuals
Yeah,
during the Earth changes.
right. Specifically those with like the right
The
vibration.
right vibration, it's a very selective form of salvation, right?
Yeah, it is.
It suggests that, like, those who are left behind are somehow less evolved or spiritually prepared or something.
Right. Almost like, a spiritual Darwinism kind of.
Yeah. Almost sounds scarier than, like, the Earth changes themselves.
Yeah, it does. And it raises these questions about like, okay, well, what are the criteria for selection
Right.
and where are these people being taken?
And the book draws, um, a pretty stark contrast
Yeah,
with the biblical concept of the rapture.
right,
In the biblical narrative, God removes his followers
right,
from a world that's about to face judgment.
right,
It's an act of, like, divine protection and deliverance.
right. Whereas the alien evacuation scenario
Yeah.
seems more like this selective
All
process
right.
based on some sort of, undefined spiritual standard.
And then there's the question of destination, right?
Right,
The
exactly.
rapture, as described in the Bible,
Yeah,
talks about believers going to heaven,
right,
which is a realm beyond, like, the physical universe.
right.
Whereas the alien evacuation
Yeah,
often depicts, evacuees being taken to another planet
right.
or to another dimension within, like, the physical realm.
It's a subtle but significant difference. It
Yeah.
really reflects, these different worldviews and
Yep.
different understandings of like the nature of reality and the afterlife.
Right. And then, just to make things even more interesting, the book throws the Nephilim into the mix.
Oh, here we go.
Remind me, who are the Nephilim again?
The Nephilim are these mysterious beings
Right.
that are mentioned in Genesis 6.
Right.
And they're often interpreted as the offspring of fallen angels
Right.
and human women.
So, like, these hybrid beings.
Right, essentially.
Half angel, half human.
Powerful, potentially supernatural beings.
So what role do they play in this whole cosmic drama?
Well, the book delves into this potential connection between the Nephilim and end times prophecies.
Right.
It draws on passages from Isaiah and Revelation that describe the return of these beings in the last days.
So it's almost like, the boundaries between, like, the physical and spiritual realms are becoming increasingly blurred.
Right? It's like these ancient forces are kind of re-emerging.
Yeah, it's a little creepy to
Yeah.
play a role in these, unfolding events. And I have a feeling this is where the whole, like, cosmic deception idea comes in.
Right.
It started to feel like, like a sci-fi thriller with biblical undertones.
It is, and you're definitely picking up on the central theme of the book,
Yeah.
which is this possibility of a grand deception
Right.
that's orchestrated by these interdimensional beings.
Right. The book warns about, like, false Christs and prophets
Right.
performing signs and wonders,
Right.
capable of deceiving even the elect. It's like a cosmic conspiracy theory.
It is.
What if everything we think we know about reality is wrong?
Right.
What if these alien encounters are part of, like, this larger scheme to manipulate humanity?
It's a chilling thought.
Yeah, it is. The book draws a connection between these alien encounters
Right.
and the emergence of the Antichrist,
Right.
which is this figure that's described in, Daniel and Revelation
Right.
as this charismatic leader
Right.
who deceives the world and leads it into this period of great tribulation.
Yeah.
And the book suggests that this Antichrist figure might even be a Nephilim himself.
Right.
So the very beings that, some people are looking to for salvation
Right.
could be involved in this ultimate deception.
It's a wild twist.
Yeah, it is. And it suggests that, like, the teachings of the behaviors of these alleged extraterrestrials
Right.
bear some similarities to, like, demonic activity
Right.
and deception.
It really blurs the lines
Yeah.
between science fiction and spiritual warfare.
So are we saying that aliens are demons?
I don't know. I need a minute to process this one.
Yeah, it's a lot.
The book doesn't explicitly state that,
Right.
but it does raise this really profound questions
Yeah.
about like the true nature and the intentions of these beings.
Right. And it challenges us to look beyond like the surface,
Right.
and consider the possibility that what we perceive as like advanced technology
Yeah.
might actually be a manifestation of like supernatural power.
And that these messages, whether they seem benevolent
Right.
or malevolent,
Right.
are just a small part of like a much larger story.
Yeah. A much larger story that we might not even be able to comprehend at this point.
It's a disturbing thought, but I think it forces us to grapple with, the complexities of these encounters
Right.
and the potential consequences of just accepting these beliefs without, really critically examining them.
Wow. So much to think about. We've really explored a lot of ground here. Ancient astronaut theories, government cover-ups, UFO religions,
Right.
and even the potential for this cosmic deception. It's a lot to unpack, and I got to admit, it is a little unsettling.
It's definitely it's challenging, isn't it? But I think the book doesn't offer, easy answers, but it really does make you think
Right.
about these encounters and their implications. And I think one of the most important takeaways is that even in the face of these, seemingly overwhelming forces,
Right.
we still have the power to choose what we believe.
That's a really important point. We're not just passive bystanders in all of this, right?
Right.
We have agency,
Yeah.
which brings us back to you, the listener. What resonates with you from all of this?
Yeah, I mean, do some of these concepts, align with your own experiences or beliefs?
Right.
Maybe you've had your own encounters with the unexplained.
Right.
Or, maybe you've been drawn to New Age teachings or this idea of, extraterrestrial intervention.
Right. Or maybe you're, firmly rooted in a traditional faith and you find these ideas unsettling or even, blasphemous,
Right.
whatever your perspective. I think the book really encourages us to, engage with these topics thoughtfully.
Absolutely. I mean, we can't just dismiss these accounts as just the products of like, overactive imaginations.
Right.
There are too many credible witnesses, too many consistent details to just, write it all off as nonsense.
Right. But on the other hand, we can't just blindly accept everything we hear either, right?
Right.
As the book highlights, there's a real danger in being, gullible,
Right.
especially when it comes to matters of faith and spirituality.
Especially with this kind of stuff.
Yeah. So how do we navigate this, increasingly complex landscape?
I think the book really emphasizes the importance of grounding ourselves in truth,
Yeah.
whatever that might mean, for each individual.
Right.
For some people, that might mean, deepening their depth,
Right.
studying scripture.
Right.
For others, it could involve like strengthening their critical thinking skills,
Yeah.
learning to evaluate sources, being aware of like, the techniques of persuasion and manipulation.
Right.
It's really about recognizing our own biases
Right.
and being willing to, challenge our assumptions.
Right.
It's easy to get caught up in the mystery and the intrigue of all this stuff,
Yeah.
but we really have to be discerning.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads to, I guess, a practical question.
Yeah.
Right? What steps can we take to be more prepared
Right.
in a world of, increasing information, potential deception?
I think the book suggests that we, approach all information, especially, stuff online, on social media,
Right.
with a healthy dose of skepticism.
Right. Don't just accept things at face value.
Right, exactly. Dig deeper,
Right.
verify sources,
Right.
consider alternative viewpoints.
Yeah. Take responsibility for your own beliefs.
Absolutely.
Be able to articulate what you believe and why.
Right, and be open to having your views challenged, right?
Right.
That's how we grow and learn.
Yeah, that's how we learn. So, even with all this talk about potential deception and the unsettling aspects of these encounters,
Right.
there's still this sense of wonder and possibility, right?
It is fascinating.
It begs the question, could there be more to these encounters than meets the eye?
Right. I mean, the book hints at the possibility that this phenomenon
Yeah.
isn't just about, extraterrestrial visitors,
Right.
but about something far more profound.
Yeah, something that stretches our understanding of reality.
Right. What if we're dealing with entities
Right.
from other dimensions,
Yeah.
operating under, different laws of physics, possessing powers that are beyond our comprehension?
And what if these messages,
Right.
whether they seem benevolent or malevolent,
Right.
are just like a small part of a much larger story?
Right.
It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it really is.
What if these encounters are like preparing us for something bigger,
Right.
something we can't even grasp yet?
It's exciting and frightening at the same time.
It is. It is. It's like standing on the edge of an uncharted territory,
Right.
sensing the mysteries beyond, but not knowing what they hold.
That's the beauty of a deep dive like this, right?
Yeah?
It sparks our curiosity, it challenges our assumptions,
Yeah,
it leaves us with that sense of awe and wonder.
it really does. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the world of alien encounters.
Yeah, this was fun.
We hope it sparked your curiosity
Absolutely.
and gave you some food for thought.
A lot to think about.
A lot to think about. Remember, there's always more to learn and explore.
Right.
Keep asking questions, keep seeking answers,
Keep your mind open.
and keep your mind open to the possibilities. Until next time, keep diving deep.
Yeah, keep diving.